Hello and welcome to another YouTube video. I'm Tandy, and today we're going to be playing some Pioneer as we test out a very interesting deck, and one that is relatively new to the Pioneer format. This is a Bring to Light Omnath deck that does not play Niv-Mizzet Pillar Pay Runes, or Niv-Mizzet whatever, the one that draws 10 cards. So that Niv-Mizzet made you play like a bunch of weaker two-color cards so that you could essentially turn the Niv-Mizzet into like a big draw spell. But what ended up happening is that your mana base was bad. It was hard to cast some of the spells. It really just put a lot of strain on you as far as deck building is concerned. And I think that what we can do is essentially cut Niv from that list and play cards that are good with Bring to Light, things that are good in general to draw naturally. And that's what whoever built this deck originally decided to do. And I think that it's a pretty cool direction to go, and I'm excited to play it for the first time. So in essence, this is a 5-color control deck. We are essentially trying to control our opponent's aggression with removal, like Chain to the Rocks. Chain to the Rocks and Leyline Binding make up the bulk of our removal. Chain to the Rocks, you know, we do need a mountain, but with Fabled Passage to go get the basic mountain, or the dual lands like Sacred Foundry, and even the tri-lands like Ragran Triumph, Ketria Triumph, and Jetmir Garden, even Ziators and Xanders. You know, we're playing a bunch of actual mountains that Chain to the Rocks can attach to. So I think that it is a great removal spell for that. For just 1 mana, you can take care of essentially any creature in the format that doesn't have hexproof. Sylvan Carotid, a really dope 2-mana accelerator. This card has been a key member of all Bring to Light strategies since the inception of the archetype. Sylvan Carotid plays defense nicely early on. It doesn't die to many removal spells, and overall I think it's just a great card for the deck. Keep an eye on it playing defense nicely, as well as getting us off colors that we need in tough spots. Courier's Briefcase, we have 2 of these. It acts similarly to a Sylvan Carotid in that it's a 2-mana thing that accelerates, but the gameplay is significantly different. The 1/1 that you generate is able to play defense decently against 1 toughness creatures, can chump block in a pinch. Later in the game, we can use this to draw cards. I don't think it's going to happen too often, but it is something that does come up, especially when you're chaining Omnaths and playing Fabled Passage and getting tons of extra mana. But in a pinch, this just ramps you 1 time, and I think that that's good enough. Fable the Mirror Breaker X4. This is going to be just the best card in our deck. Almost every time we cast it, it's going to be wanted, and we're just going to want to draw multiples. Luckily, they help find other copies. It's just an incredible card, and any mid-range deck that plays red should likely be playing 4 copies of Fable the Mirror Breaker. 4 copies of Omnath, Locus of Creation. This is the card that the deck is built around. We're going to be casting these from hand quite a bit to draw a card. If we ever pair it with a Fabled Passage, we get to juice it with mana, just like we do with the modern builds. It's a little bit harder in this format because the fetch lands are banned outside of Fabled Passage and Terramorphic Expanse and things like that, but we're just playing the 4 Fabled Passage for the turbo combo of like playing it and then generating 5 mana off the land. We have 4 copies of Bring to Light. This is the marquee card of the deck. It's going to search our library for essentially any spell. We can play creatures, instants, and sorceries with mana value less than the converge mana spent, so each color essentially for domain it contributes to it. One thing that's really cool with Bring to Light is that it actually lets you cheat on flip cards. There's 2 cards in particular that I think we want to talk about, but before we do that, just want to say Bring to Light plus any card in your deck is usually going to be pretty good. Bring to Light's the best card in the deck by a lot. Whenever you cast Bring to Light, your opponent should be pooping their pants a little bit. The 2 cards that we're going to go get with Bring to Light that we kind of cheat with is first going to be Valky, God of Lies. The front side, a 2/1 that, you know, takes a creature out of your opponent's hand and can copy it. We're not really in the business for that. We're going to be casting the backside. When we tutor for Valky off of Bring to Light, we can choose to cast the backside of it. I know Bring to Light does not say Planeswalker, but it's a cheat effect. It's essentially is the best I can explain it. You choose Valky, and then you can cast either side. Tybalt, the backside, lets you essentially dominate any fair mid-range game. You're going to be killing stuff, you know, playing cards off the top of both players' decks. Tybalt, just a really tough threat for opponents to beat, and for just 5 mana, especially tough. The other card we're kind of cheating with is Selph's Glyphweaver. For just 3 mana, we get a 2/3 that can exile itself. for creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Again, we're not really in the business for that. We want the backside. We're going to be tutoring for a Glyph Weaver, but then we're going to be casting Deadly Vanity. Choose a creature or Planeswalker, then destroy all other creatures and Planeswalkers. So we choose ours to keep. Everything else gets blown up. Another couple of 1-ups that we have that we can tutor for Bring to Light. We have one copy of Extinction Event. This is going to be our sweeper of choice because it exiles, and we can kind of control it based on odd even. Most things in the format that are good cost 1 or 3. Not a whole lot of 2-drops running around, so we get to dodge our own Sylvan Caryatid on occasion, dodge our own Omnath. Hostage Taker, which can be a nice removal spell that can steal something big. I'm not in love with Hostage Taker. I think that this could be any interactive piece, and it's probably fine. But Hostage Taker specifically works nicely with Elish Nord, Mother of Machines. Now, this is going to be one we tutor for a bit as a thing to suppress our opponent's ETBs, but we can also get a good bit of value out of all of our own triggers. Things like Courier's Briefcase, make 2 1/1s, Chain to the Rocks, and Leyline Binding, eat 2 creatures, things like that. Escape to the Wilds is a nice one that we can tutor for whenever we're low on raw resources. Tutoring for Escape and casting it lets us dig 5 deep, looking for extra mana sources, looking for more powerful things. I think it's a nice hit. Whenever an Omnath isn't necessarily enough in a specific spot, Escape to the Wilds can do something unique. Lastly, we have one copy of the Scarab God in our deck that we can tutor for with Bring to Light. This is going to be something that completely dominates the battlefield should our opponent not be able to exile it. If it dies, it comes back to hand. That's great. We can reanimate things like Omnath from the graveyard and draw a card, Sylvan Caryatid, or mostly our opponent's stuff, you know. So I'm not 100% on the Scarab God because a lot of our removal does exile. But I think it's just a generically powerful card that works well as a top-end effect. So I'm interested in seeing how it works. But this is the deck. The mana base, a little all over the place, but you kind of have to be all over the place when you play Fabled Passage, Basics, and Tri-lands. You know, we have 2 Ketria, Jetmir, a Raffines, a Ragran, 2 Sparas, a Xanders, a Zayaturas. Like, not even all of the Tri-lands tap for red. You know, they're not even all things for Chain to the Rock. So, I would never be able to build this mana base myself. I just don't have the stuff, I guess. Sideboard, 2 copies of Rest in Peace. This is going to be excellent against Greasefang and other graveyard decks like Neoform. 1 Disdainful Stroke. This is going to be mostly for things like Mono Green Devotion, but has plenty of targets. Ether Gust is going to be mostly for Mono Green, but comes in against red decks as well. 2 Go Blank. These are going to be really nice against decks like Greasefang, but also against opponents that play things like Phoenix. Arclight Phoenix in particular, you know, the exiling their graveyard hits their Phoenixes, but also can hit their Treasure Cruises, so they don't have anything for Delve. 4 copies of Rending Volley. This is going to be the MVP in the sideboard, I think. Greasefang, I think, can be a particularly tough matchup because Chain of the Rocks is bad sorcery speed removal against it. Our deck operates mostly at sorcery speed, and we need to kind of juke them and have an instant speed answer. 1 copy of Slaughter Games. This is going to come in against matchups where if taking 1 card out of their deck significantly reduces their ability to win. Slaughter Games could be good. Some builds main deck it. I'm not a big fan of main decking it, so I cut it. We have 2 Reckoner Bankbuster. This is going to be great in grindy matchups against things like Rakdos. Interested to see how useful it's going to be. We can't crew it that well, so I'm curious to see if it's going to be good at all. And then lastly, 1 copy of Pithy Needle. This is going to be mostly for Planeswalkers like Karn the Great Creator. We have 1 copy of Gigantha as our companion because our Bring to Light deck is able to not have double pips pretty easily. We don't really even want double pips. We have incentive to not have double pips. So the Gigantha makes a lot of sense. Most decks like this are 80 cards with Yorion, but they play pretty clunkily. I'm interested to see what the 60 card build looks like and how it plays. Let's go ahead and run through a league and see how it goes. All right, so let's go over the things I liked and didn't like about the deck. For starters, 27 lands in a 60 card deck is not too many, necessarily, but we need ways to help turn those lands into, different things later. Fable the Mirror Breaker is supposed to be that thing, but I think we just need something else. The Courier's Briefcase was kind of weak. I didn't really draw it too often. I sided out a lot. I'm not sure if that just means it shouldn't be in the deck or if I should just not be siding out as much as I am. Omnath was good, but not the end-all be-all. Hostage Taker, I think, can get cut. I I honestly think Escape to the Wilds might be better than Bring to Light. It's more about brute force resources than anything else. I felt like I just wasn't doing enough ridiculous stuff. And I think that Bring to Light with Omnath is cool, but only if you can sequence it with Fabled Passage. But that just doesn't happen very much. Like, you just don't have the Omnath and the Fabled Passage 5-drop turns. People kill your Omnath, you know, in weird spots. They hit you with discard spells. They counter one of the two things. Like, sometimes you just have to play the Fabled Passage early because you just don't have another land. It's just, honestly, it's just tough. I don't really know where to go from here. I probably have to play like a couple dozen leagues or whatever to really get a feel for the things that are necessary to make this deck viable. But I would not recommend this deck for an upcoming tournament. Not only is it extremely difficult to pilot, I also think that there are significant flaws. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. But this has been Bring to Light Omnath. That's going to do it for today's video. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.